Good afternoon and welcome to Tea with Ann Marie. So sorry to keep you all waiting. My computer decided it wanted to update at the last minute. Who does that? My computer, of course. Anywho, happy Friday to everyone that's out there. I'm super excited about my guest today and our conversation because our conversation relates to me directly as well as you, our community members. So I have my good friend, Rob Long, who is the chair of the Palm Beach County Soil and Water Conservation District. He's also up for election, but I thought who better to bring the experience, knowledge, and information about soil and water. Oh my God, did it? Okay, sorry, something else just popped up. Who better than to bring information about Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District than Rob Long to the conversation. So I'm gonna bring my friend Rob on.
Hello, hi Ann Marie. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be on and chat with you guys.
Thank you for being here. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
I can hear you well. Okay. Okay, good. So, Rob, you and I had the opportunity to meet a few years back, young Democrats. You've been super active in our community, as I have been. I think that's actually how we meet most of the people, right? Through our activism, through volunteering, and just really affecting positive change in Palm Beach County.
100%. It's really fortunate to meet so many great folks like yourself through those efforts. It's been to me the most rewarding part about being involved with groups like the Young Democrats and other sort of nonprofits and other groups, civic groups, is meeting a lot of great people.
Absolutely. So give me a little background about yourself. So I want to let everyone know who you are. Are you from Palm Beach County originally? Like, give me a little background.
I am from the weather capital of the world, Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, home of the groundhog. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's related to Groundhog's Day, like the Punxsutawney Phil thing. So I'm from there, but I've lived here in Palm Beach County, most of that in Delray, for the last almost 12 years now. So I've been here for a bit. I'm a full-blooded Floridian now. I get sick almost every time I travel up north to Pennsylvania. So I think that means I'm a Floridian.
I think so.
So my degree was in Penn State in civil engineering, graduated in 2008, moved down here for a job with a civil engineering firm, did some roadway construction type work and environmental remediation work for a number of years, got my MBA from the University of Florida, kind of while I was working, and then sort of pivoted and did some other stuff for a while, ended up working with AIG and loss prevention, worked on flood mitigation, wind mitigation and flood control type work on commercial properties. And in the last couple of years, I've pivoted and sort of full time. I started my own PR company, community relations, grassroots type company. We work with a lot of local political campaigns, but also with nonprofits and different groups to really help bring the public into the conversation more. We see a lot of meetings and approvals for various projects and programs that oftentimes it's a loud minority that kind of controls the narrative. And so we developed a company that really tries to engage the public in different ways. That's called Door-to-Door Strategies. And I've been president of the Palm Beach County Young Democrats for the last 4 years. I started that around the same time I was first elected to the Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District. That was back in 2016. So I've been on that for 4 years, and now I'm up for re-election along with yourself on the ballot.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't realize we had so much in common. So kudos to being a fellow communicator and owner of PR Outreach. It's so important, the work that we do to really educate and inform the public. And it definitely helps me wake up every morning knowing that we're affecting positive change, even through our profession as well. So congratulations on starting your firm.
Well, thank you. And I know how great Mosaic Group is. And I look forward to, hopefully partnering up with you down the road. You guys do amazing work.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So let's talk Soil and Water Conservation District. I think that definitely with me deciding to run a few months back has definitely started a conversation in other communities where I get people, some of our even our leaders of different organizations who's like, okay, so what exactly is Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District? What does that do, and why are you doing it? And I've had to explain with the knowledge that I know of. And of course, I claim to be no expert on the environment, no expert on ag or water or soil, but I have had the opportunity to work in the environmental community for on numerous occasions over the last 15 years. So I have a little more knowledge than the average person may have, who may have seen it on a ballot over the years, but just said, oh, okay, I don't know who they are. I don't know their party affiliation. I don't even know what this means, but check that person. And we definitely don't want people doing this, right?
No, that's the worst. And the thing I always tell anyone is, if you don't know who candidates are in a given race, try and find out. And if you can't, for whatever reason, just don't vote in it. Don't guess the name. You never know who you might be supporting.
Right.
But yeah, we might be the last thing on the ballot. I have a mail-in ballot. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't actually looked at it yet. I'll be probably filling that out the next day or so. But I think we're probably pretty close to the end, if not the very last thing on the ballot. Oh, you have it right there. Perfect.
We are on the back, and we are definitely not last. The amendments are last.
So
we're so you have to flip the ballot over, and we're on the back of the ballot before you get to page 2 or page 3.
I recommend folks start from the back of your ballot, start it backwards. And then you'll get to us right away before you get bored.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. A lot of folks don't know what we do, and that's something that I've been slowly trying to improve over the last few years since I've been on the board, is to get a little more outreach out there. I write a lot of op-eds that they publish in the Post and sometimes in the Sentinel, to try and give folks a little bit of insight to what we do and advocate for some specific things, such as like Lake Okeechobee, the regulation schedule for the lake, which has been a very contentious issue. We've kind of taken a stand on that as a board, and I've written some articles about that, among other things, just about what our district does, which is, as you know, mainly it focuses in the Ag Reserve and the EAA, and helps these big farms and nurseries really optimize their irrigation system, which is a fancy way of saying helps them conserve a lot of water.
So let's pause, because I know we know the jargon, right? I think a lot of it, when you say EAA, all these different things, I really want us to break it down so simple, Rob,
Yep.
where the average person, let's really educate folks about, let's just start with ag. Our ag community, majority of our ag community is pretty much out west in the Glades. Right. Yep. So let's start with that conversation so people can understand where the agriculture community starts and stops, and then the EAA, what that means, etc.
No, I'm with you. Let's break it down. So yeah, as you said, most of our agricultural communities out west. And I think it's important that folks know that Palm Beach County is the biggest agricultural community in the state. It's actually the biggest agricultural county east of the Mississippi. I think it's one of the 10th largest in the whole country. So we have a lot of agriculture in the state. And a lot of people don't really know that, especially folks that live on the coast, don't really go out west and whatnot. But the EAA is the Everglades Agricultural Area. And then we have the Ag Reserve, the Agricultural Reserve, which is land that's mostly owned by the county that's leased out to farms. And they have specific rules on how you can develop on that land. And it's meant to keep this land kind of in perpetuity for agricultural use. That's the kind of the purpose behind it. And those farms that exist out there are mainly the ones that we service. They enroll in our program, what we call our mobile irrigation lab, which is where we send our project managers out there to basically consult with these farms, and it costs them nothing. It's free of charge. And that's when they help them to re-engineer their irrigation systems and put in different types of sprinkler heads and things that amount to a huge water savings in our county, a lot of conservation. We can get into this. I mean, this maybe I don't want to go on a huge tangent, but this water conservation is becoming more and more important as we sort of see the risks of saltwater intrusion becoming more and more prevalent. sea level rise, as well as heavily overtaxing our aquifer, which is basically the source of our fresh water, our groundwater source of drinking water and just all of our fresh water needs in the whole South Florida area. That can basically get contaminated with what we call saltwater intrusion. And as we have sea level rise and we start to overtax that water for aquifer, because we have this massively growing population down here, that's a big problem. And so I do see our district as an extremely important asset to really help curb that by helping to conserve that water and do whatever we can to take some of the pressure off of overdrawing that aquifer.
Absolutely. And so I want to throw just a couple of stats out there because I don't think people really understand. And it's interesting because I grew up on Lake Okeechobee, right? City of Pahokee, only city that sits on Lake Okeechobee. So, and I touted that for a long time in college. We say, well, where's Pahokee? I'm like, well, you know that circle in Florida when you look at the map, that's Lake Okeechobee, and Pahokee sits right there at the little bottom right down there. So I'd have to do this whole explanation. But what I did not know and what I could not explain at the time, which I know now, is that Lake Okeechobee is such an important source to not just Palm Beach County, but all of South Florida. Lake Okeechobee supplies water to 8 million plus residents in South Florida. And I think it's very important for people to understand that is that is our water supply, our fresh water supply, our drinking water supply. So it's important that we A, conserve, but B, when we talk about the issues, like you just said about the lake levels, people don't even understand what the average lake level should be. If it's too low, what could happen? If it's too high, what could happen? So I think we definitely should talk about lake levels and people understanding that. So if we talk about the lake levels and then how it even serves, it's kind of like this, it's an interesting like highway that's been created, a highway of water that's been created that's pumped out through these canals. And it's very intriguing to me. I don't know about other people, I think it's boring to other folks, but it's very intriguing to me how our water system works and how it goes out to our different municipalities and communities. And then of course our farming and agriculture community as well that depend on this water supply. So I definitely want to just kind of talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, well, you're not boring me. I find it fascinating, but I'm a nerdy engineer type guy. So, but it's really interesting. It's this massive, like you said, this massive sort of web, this network of waterways, and they're all controlled and sort of delicately balanced. And you have the two kind of main ones that go out to the east and to the west. You have the Caloosahatchee and the I'm spacing on the other one that comes to the east. Anyway, you have these two major waterways that kind of come from Lake Okeechobee and sort of dump into our estuaries. And, people wonder where these algae blooms have come from. That's kind of been the big issue. The last couple summers, we've had these horrible algae blooms that have contaminated all this water in the estuary areas and along the coast, especially up along the Treasure Coast, up a little north of us. And it comes from the lake. Those blooms start in Lake Okeechobee, then we have to discharge the lake because the levels get too high, and we can't let the levels get too high because communities like Pahokee would be at risk because the Herbert Hoover Dike infrastructure around Lake Okeechobee is it's very outdated and it's in danger of failing and collapsing. Luckily, they are putting in a lot of work to reinforce that dike. They put like $1 billion into it. And Congress recently dumped more money into that to expedite it. And we're hoping in the next, I think, 2 years that will be finished. And then they can store more water in the lake and they won't have to drain it during the summer when these horrible algae blooms are in it that end up sort of, creating all these issues. But in the meantime, the proposed solution from some folks, from our governor and from Congressman Brian Mast, is to lower the lake levels before we get to the rainy season, when the algae blooms usually start to occur. So then when the rainy season comes, there's less water in there, and we don't have to create these algae blooms. We don't have to actually discharge it when the algae blooms are there. So they want to basically, in general, store a lot less water in Lake Okeechobee for a big chunk of the year. But there's a big problem with that because, as you mentioned, that is a really important backup water supply for us. Like if we hit a drought during the dry season, we need that water. We need it. Without it, you could see big problems, like literally not enough drinking water, and other issues like if my background is in loss control engineering, so I had to inspect fire systems, and if you don't have enough pressure in your groundwater in your water system, you can't feed sprinklers to like a 2 or 3 story building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge problem. Or you don't have enough to feed fire hydrants.
Right.
So you can't just haphazardly drain a lake that we may need. And so we have to work to find a solution. And also there isn't really any proof that draining the lake during the dry season is really going to help the algae bloom problem.
Right. Right.
That hasn't been a proven solution. And so there's been a lot of debate about that. But, our board last year did write a resolution that recommended that the Army Corps of Engineers, who manages those lake levels and that dike infrastructure, and they're the ones who are basically updating the regulation schedule. We've sort of advised, we wrote a letter to them, and we also signed on to another resolution, I believe, that was a combined effort from a whole bunch of different county commissioners and municipal leaders and things like that kind of advise the Army Corps to keep the levels where they're at for now. Like let's find a more balanced solution to this instead of jumping into one that could actually create another problem and not even solve the problem they're trying to solve.
Right. No, I agree with you on that wholeheartedly, because we don't want to run into, we're in an unpredictable climate where we may have a really great rainy season, and then there have been times where we've had droughts in South Florida where we don't get much rain. There's not much activity in the tropics and things really dry up. I remember that time when it was so dry, we literally had fires in the Everglades. We had fires along the highways. It was so dry in Florida that we almost had not nowhere near California, of course, but we had that microcosm of that. But then we also had the water shortage. If people don't remember, I think this was probably like 2011 when we had the water shortage. And we were almost at the brink, West Palm in particular was almost at the brink of having to bring water in from elsewhere, drinking water.
You couldn't irrigate your lawn and stuff for a while. There was all these restrictions that they had to impose. It was crazy.
Exactly.
It's hard to imagine a drought right now, by the way, when it's like pouring out and we're talking about the risk of a drought, but it's still very possible.
It's still possible. It's still possible because we don't know what each season may bring. So I stand with you in saying I don't agree that we should have this new regulation schedule that they're imposing or trying to impose because we don't want, of course, the risk of a drought, but the other issues that come with not having enough water stored in the aquifer. So definitely, I want everyone to continue to pay attention to that issue as well. And I love that you brought up the Herbert Hoover Dike because it's so important that we have the security. And I'm glad that finally construction and funding is going into securing our levees because we don't want to have, for those who are familiar or may not be familiar with the storm of 1928. There's a memorial out west, and there's also a memorial in West Palm Beach off of Tamarind Avenue, where when the dike broke, the levee broke, we had casualties in the thousands. Yeah. So it's very important that we pay attention to that as well. And then there was with the reservoir that they're building. So I did some research, and I actually was involved with the South Florida Water Management District back when they had the Accelerate initiative. And the whole thing was that they were going to build these 8 reservoirs around the state not around the state, but in the impacted areas. But at the time, it was supposed to be this huge economic development impact, especially for the Glades area. And I'm a bit taken that with the monies that's been approved, which is the project, the expected construction cost is well over $1 billion, right? So you're talking about $1 billion of infrastructure and construction in this reservoir. And I have yet to see any conversation about the local economic impact, what jobs it's going to create, any trainings, any business opportunities for small and women and minority-owned businesses. I've yet to see that conversation happen as well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree, though. There hasn't been any real conversation about that. And I think that's extremely important to mention because that's going to have a massive economic impact in that area.
Absolutely. And we know that the Glades community has had for a while now one of the largest unemployment rates. And can you imagine now since COVID? So to not have this conversation about how this particular project can bring jobs and what's needed for local residents to participate in that process is astonishing to me that there's no talk about that. So that's something that I definitely want to, if I had to say what's on my first 100 days, if elected, is definitely having that conversation with the leaders at the district as well as at the Army Corps to say, hey, where are we when we talk about the local economic impact, and how are you going to ensure that people are able to get jobs, and if there's training that needs to happen, that they're able to get trained for these jobs. So I think that's super important for us to put on our to-do list, Rob, if I'm so lucky to serve as your colleague.
I think it's right.
Absolutely. So climate change. You know, we're getting these questions about climate change, and, you know, there are the believers in climate change, and then there are the non-believers in climate change. I'm a believer in climate change. I don't know about you, Rob.
I do believe in climate change. And, you know, not to be divisive, but at this point, I don't really acknowledge conversations with folks who don't believe in climate change, because it's just not worth, I don't think it's worth anyone's time to really have those conversations anymore. We had a government that wouldn't let us talk about it for a long time, you know, as government officials. And I think it was very destructive. And I think it kind of put us behind the 8 ball in a lot of ways, as far as actually dealing with sea level rise. So I think it's super important that we kind of acknowledge this as fact. People are like, well, it's just a theory. Well, you know, gravity is just a theory too, and no one debates that anymore. So I feel like we just need to move forward and really, you know, it's a thing. Climate change is real, and humankind has exacerbated it, and we see the effects of it here every day. I would challenge anyone who doesn't really believe it to go to Miami when they have their sunny day flooding and tell me that nothing's changed.
Not just Miami, it has. I witnessed it firsthand last September, where there was no hurricane, no tropical storm, none of that happening. It was just a regular sunny day, and I was staying at the Diplomat, and it was an event there, and that entire weekend. So I'm literally driving down. It was in Hollywood. I'm literally driving down was that ocean, and if I was heading south, to the left of me, the water levels were just super high in the intercoastal, the lagoon.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it was super high, and I'm like, whoa, that water looks. But then on the flip side, where the hotels were, it was just like water just up to their doors. And I'm like,
scary, isn't it?
There was no rain. There was no rain, no nothing. It was just, and these were the king tides. And so when you see that, Miami Beach has been dealing with it for years. And then now Broward County, it's dealing with it. And then here in Palm Beach, Boca.
Yep, and Delray too. We see the effect from the king tide in Boca, in Delray too, along the intercoastal.
Yeah, Delray and Boca has been getting, you see a little bit in West Palm over along Flagler.
Yeah.
Boulevard, what's it, Flagler Drive, I'm sorry. Flagler Drive, you see a little bit along Flagler Drive, but not as bad as Broward and Dade County, definitely not as bad as Miami Beach. So it's happening, the king tides are happening, the sea level rise is happening, and I do agree that because we have been silenced for so long that now we're having to be so reactive. The point of being proactive has pretty much gone out the window.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're being reactive to it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in a meeting because when I went through Leadership Florida, sea level rise was one of the issues that we looked at. And I learned so much just through one of our class meetings. But when I went to a meeting, so there's some social justice that comes with sea level rise that a lot of people don't realize. So for example, in Miami, one of the social justice issues that came up, I don't know if I should say social justice, but kind of sort of, was people that were fleeing from the coastline in the coastal area now saying, where do I move to? Because this is now impacting my real estate, right? And so what started happening, or what has been happening and what is happening, is the flight to the inner city.
Yep.
Which then causes more gentrification.
Yep, 100%.
And more pushing out of people for numerous reasons. A, because now it becomes unaffordable to live there, right?
Yeah.
The neighborhood begins to change completely. And so I remember that I was a part of a chamber meeting, and someone from a speaker came in to talk about sea level rise in Palm Beach County and how we're not necessarily totally feeling the impacts just yet. And because we have a little higher ground in Palm Beach County, we may not be as impacted as Broward and Dade. And I asked the question, I said, well, how can we ensure that some of the flight and gentrification that's taking place in Dade does not also take place here in Palm Beach County? Of course, they didn't really have an answer other than, well, we're gonna reach out and we're gonna notify the community and let them know what's happening. Of course, I haven't heard anything since, and that was probably a year and a half ago. But, I think it's important for people to understand the ripple effects is not just about seeing the water. It's not just about how it impacts commercial and residential real estate, but it also impacts the businesses, it impacts communities. And now when things start moving and shifting, now it impacts the larger community and not just those who live along the coastline. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to share on that.
No, I think you make some really good points. And I think having the whole conversation about, environmental inequality is a conversation that needs to have more light shed on it. Because you do see it, and it manifests in so many different ways. Like you said, as folks are pushed out of these communities, because you have folks from the coast moving in, it creates a lot of friction, and you have a lot of risk of gentrification in some of these areas. But also, when there are flooding issues and infrastructure is invested in, it's often not in the low wealth communities or in a lot of the communities of color. They're the ones that suffer more. It's kind of like how COVID is now, seems to be that communities of color and different low wealth communities are affected disproportionately by these different crises. And you're seeing that with all kinds of issues regarding environmental contamination and sea level rise and population movements. I think it's certainly apropos to bring up how different communities are being affected. And, this conversation needs to be had because I see it here in Delray too. You have areas out in the Northwest, Southwest that have really bad drainage problems. And the infrastructure money is just never invested there for obvious reasons. And it's a conversation that I think it's well past time. No. Especially if these issues continue to get worse.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because, see, again, the average resident is probably not thinking about the drainage in their community. They're not thinking about sewer and water in their community. They're not thinking about food security, when it comes to our, if you're someone who buys local produce, and you're not thinking about how it's grown, You're not thinking about the food security of it. You're not thinking about the impacts that even COVID has on the farming community. So it's just so many. I think there's an opportunity, Rob, where there's so many conversations that we can bring to the forefront for our communities to really and truly understand how weather, climate, pandemics, all of it impacts our water, our soil, our agriculture in general, right? And we haven't even gotten to educating people about our the areas that are protected, right? And the preserves, right? We haven't even gotten to that conversation yet, which we will.
No, I couldn't agree more. These are issues that we need to cast a light on, and Soil and Water Conservation District is a growing platform for that. Although a lot of folks still don't know what it is, it's something that I think, especially over the last few years, we've been able to grow. And our district has been very lucky to have been recognized as one of the best performing in the state. And so I think that with great power comes great responsibility, right? I think that with that recognition, that it's very important that we work on how we are educating residents on different issues, not just where we're very focused on the farms and on the agricultural community, which that should be a big focus right now. I mean, the agricultural community, as you mentioned, took such a hit during COVID, and they have what they do is so risky in general. They provide so much of the food that we need here. But if you have a low crop yield one year, they already are taking huge risks. And because of all these supply chain breakdowns from COVID, they've really taken a hit recently.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit more, because I really want people to understand how agriculture is taking a hit, because it comes in the form of workers. It comes in the form of the food supply chain, right? So let's dive into that a little bit more. And then what is the Conservation District's role in all of that?
So, the main thing we do is provide these free services to them to really try and help them save a lot of money with their water needs, and then really consulting with them on how to optimize those systems, which does in general help save them a lot of money. But we've tried to assist and facilitate with other things as well that aren't necessarily under our purview, but a lot of our staff and folks are associated with the Farm Bureau and things like that. And I know there was a lot of work that they helped facilitate with Feeding South Florida to try and it wasn't even that I think we were able to pay the farmers for most of the food, but we were just helping them kind of offload it. They had no way to move their crops out of their farms to actually get them to people because of that supply chain breakdown. And so many of the clientele, like Royal Caribbean or like the theme parks and stuff, had shut down. And at first, Publix wasn't taking a lot of the locally grown produce. So for a while, there was nothing for them to do, and they had to disc it back into the ground until we were able to help, until some different organizations were able to partner together and help them figure out ways to reestablish some kind of supply chain and get folks to come in. And the community really did sort of show up for that, and so I was really happy to see that we were
which was good because. And I wanted us to talk more about that, because it's not like it made national news. I know like meat packing houses made national news, and but it was not a lot of conversation about how our farms were impacted, or just general produce, how that was impacted, especially with so many restaurants that was shut down. And like you said, the cruise lines, and so if you were not in the supply chain to go to a major grocer who was still open, then you were pretty much stuck with your inventory. So thankfully, like you said, through your work and the other community partners, they were able to offload some of the produce and things that they were having to hold on to.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to take credit for the hard work that a lot of other organizations did. All we did was maybe help facilitate that a bit and try and raise awareness of the issue. I'm hoping moving forward we can really step in and assist the ag community more, because they certainly need it.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
And then even I was on a call, and even from another awareness piece was, I remember that, with the whole COVID testing and ensuring that the migrant workers were able to get the information to go get tested, where to go, all of that. I think that was a critical part as well. So I don't know if you want to touch on that, just how communicating with the different farm workers.
Yeah, it's extremely important, because they have a large amount of staff that sort of often lives on site or nearby, and they get bussed out to the different farms, and they're in close quarters, and making sure that these folks know that they need to be wearing masks and things like that, because they can't really socially distance. Super important. But I mean, from what I've seen and heard, that the farms have been really good and very proactive about making sure that their people know and have masks, have gloves, have hand sanitizer and things like that. And I think that they, for the most part, have really kept down the spread of COVID within the agricultural community because of that. But we kind of have been trying to help with that and spread the word and kind of check in just to make sure. But frankly, they've been on top of it the whole time.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And for those who don't know, just another little stats. Actually, I'm going to pull up a couple of statistics, fun facts that people may not be aware of for our agriculture community and our agribusinesses. But for those who don't know, it is, and like Rob said, number, like in the top 10 in the country as far as ag industries go. And you can go to my website, elect Ann Marie Sorrell, to see some of these fun facts that I'm going to pull up. Rob, what's your website so people can go and support you for re-election? Because I think it's important that we continue to have your voice.
Well, thank you. My website's voteforroblong.com, and it's just the word for, not the number. But my website is still under construction, so it should go live in the next day or so. So if you go to it now, all it is an Anadot link to donate money to my campaign, which I welcome folks to do, by the way. But there's not a full website up yet, but that should be forthcoming. Okay,
awesome. So, yeah, I'm trying to pull it all up. Maybe it's on my homepage. I'm trying to see where I have these fun facts so I can share them with everyone. Is it on how to vote? Well, I don't know why I can't find it, right? You know how you're looking for something and you just cannot find it at the moment? Why is that?
Story of my life. Usually my girlfriend can help me locate it because I lose everything and she always knows where things are.
Oh, okay. I found it. Yay. So if anyone wants to know where the fun facts are, if you go under the My Commitment button on my page, where I outline what I'm committed to if elected. So fun facts about farming, about South Florida farming. So sweet corn, enough to feed more than 16.5 million people. That's how much corn we grow here in Palm Beach County. For sugar, 25% of America's sugar production is grown right here in Palm Beach County. Rice, we grow enough rice to feed 25 million people. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of rice. I love me some rice.
Me too. And that takes a lot of water to cultivate that much rice.
That is a lot of water to cultivate that much rice. Exactly. And then lettuce, enough to make 1 million salads. We grow enough lettuce to make 1 million salads.
Now, is that like a side salad or like a full entree salad?
I'm gonna say full entree salad.
We're talking side salads. That could be like 2 million.
It could be if you break it down into side salads. Yeah. Now for cabbage, it's enough for 250 million servings of coleslaw.
Oh, wow.
It's a
I mean,
lot
I'm
of
not surprised by that 'cause I don't really like coleslaw, but I do like sauerkraut. So like I would,
I mean, that's still cabbage.
yeah.
So, I mean, if you break it down culturally, uh, Caribbeans, we like to make cabbage as a mixed vegetable. So, like in the Jamaican culture, you be like, "What are your vegetables?" It's not that many, right? It's like literally cabbage, carrots, tomatoes. And then if you're Haitian, you need the cabbage to make some pickles, right?
Mm,
So the cabbage is used very differently in different cultures.
yeah.
So we do coleslaw in the Jamaican culture too, and in the Caribbean culture, but not it's. I don't think it's the same. I don't really like it. Like the only coleslaw I really like, to be honest, I don't eat from there much, is KFC. Is that bad?
Well, I'm from Pittsburgh area, and what they do there at Primanti Brothers, who they actually have a couple in Lauderdale. Their whole thing up there was they served burgers where they put the fries and coleslaw right inside the burger, like that was the thing. And now you can get it at other places, and it's called Pittsburgh style.
Oh,
And,
nice. I have
yeah,
to try that on one of my cheat non-meat, one of my cheat, my being non-meat days. Wait, no, my eating meat days. I have to do that on one of those days. But if you like barbecue, you know, coleslaw is like big with barbecue.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So for all the barbecue fans out there, 250 million servings of coleslaw coming right from here, from our cabbage. And then green beans. Did you know that we produce enough green beans to feed for 350 million servings?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of
It's
green
a lot
beans.
of like green bean casserole for
It is. Do
Thanksgiving.
you make that for Thanksgiving?
What's that?
Do you make that for Thanksgiving?
I don't make it. I don't really bake myself. I'm no good at it. But I do have family members that have always made it, and it's delicious. I love it with like the crispy onions on top and
Crispy
stuff.
onions, yeah. Yeah.
Delicious. Yeah.
I
I'm
think
a
I
big.
only like the crispy onions part of it.
I just scrape those off and leave the green beans. I love it all.
I don't feel bad, right? So celery, enough for more than 120 million stalks. So for those who like celery sticks with their chicken wings,
How many Bloody Marys with that service is the question.
Bloody Marys. Well, 120 million stalks. So I'm wondering, is that like that's the whole, I think you could probably get, out of one stock, on average, you should be able to get about, let me see, about a half stock goes in a Bloody Mary, or maybe a third of a stock goes in a Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
So if you break that,
So what was the number? If we just take that times 3, I mean, that's how many Bloody Marys you got there. I mean, that's
a lot. Yeah, 1 gazillion Bloody Marys. Now. So those are just some fun facts that I wanted to share about agriculture, and it's probably a little more than a $1.8 billion economic engine to our county. So I just want that number to resonate with people. $1.8 billion economic engine.
Yeah, it's the second biggest industry after tourism in the whole state.
It is. It is. So we are very fortunate to have most of the industry right here in Palm Beach County, and to be able to support, educate, and provide best practices for the ag businesses that we have here. So I just wanted to share that with folks. Now, we have a few minutes left. Is there anything else that people should know about the Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District? I think we did not touch on a couple of things. We didn't touch on the educational programs. We didn't touch on some of our amazing, what I would say, attractions But they're not just an attraction, they're preserving our natural resources. So the Arthur R. Marshall Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, for example. So you want to touch on some of the educational programs in our different attractions?
Yes. I'm glad you reminded me to bring that up. One thing we created about 3 years ago is called our Ambassador of the Wetlands program, which I'm very proud of. It's an incredible program where we take roughly 600 students each year from the Palm Beach County School District, from different schools. Right now we do high school. I think the first year we did middle school, we've done high school the last couple of years. And we take them out to Mounds Botanical Garden and to the Arthur R. Marshall Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, which I sit on the board for their friends group. It's an incredible organization and an incredible place to go. Highly recommend it. It's been open the whole time during the quarantine. It's been like a much needed escape for, I think, a lot of people to go out there, but it's beautiful. Highly recommend it if you haven't been out there. But anyway, so is Mounts, by the way. They're both awesome places.
Mm-hmm.
But so we have the kids go out. We do some like in-class learning before that as part of the program. Then when they have them go out and there's they have an instructor out there with them. It shows them how to dip net and identify invertebrates and do all these really cool things. Teach them about not only about environmental protection and conservation, but also kind of teach them about civic duty and things like that. And they go and see, then they go out to the Loxahatchee Wildlife Refuge as well. And then once they come back, I think it may be a few days later or a week later, they're able to do some testing afterwards to kind of see what they've learned, like a before and after. And it's really, the kids have loved it. It's been a very successful program. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it this year because of the pandemic, but I'm really hoping to resume that program as soon as we can, hopefully next year.
Mm-hmm.
Guess we'll see, but we're kind of thinking through if there's any way to do maybe a virtual option for it. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but we want to continue to do it because it's so important that, first of all, it's great to get kids out of the classroom in general, just out doing stuff. But also, it's so important that the next generation is really in tune with conservation and environmental protection, and to really have folks out there and experiencing it, to have these kids out there, I think instills a lot more passion and memories. And it's just than having someone, just teaching you in a classroom among a whole bunch of other things. It's easy to forget certain things, but I think having those kids out there experiencing it has a much more of an impact. And so I think it's such an important thing that we do. And I think another thing.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say I agree, and don't lose your thought. My first experience with the Arthur R. Marshall Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, it's such a long name, and the Friends group. Shout out to Nancy Marshall and her late husband, John Marshall, who had started the Marshall Foundation. And so that was my first, I don't even remember how I met Nancy. This was so long ago. And she was like, hey, I want you. And we had just started Mosaic Group. So literally this was our second client and they had no money. And Nancy was like, listen, I need you to do a capital campaign for the new visitor center and for the Friends group. They have no money, but can you raise money for the Friends group, et cetera? And so Nancy's one of those persons, I don't know if you know Nancy Marshall, but she's one of those persons that's very hard to tell her no.
Well, I met her online, but she's great.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, let me figure it out. And so we literally went back, came up with this whole strategy. And before Going Green was even popular, we came up with this really cool campaign called Get Green, Go Everglades. And so for 18 months, we worked on about $1,800. I think they paid us like $100 a month. The rest of it was totally in kind.
That's awesome.
But when the first time I went out to the refuge, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. It's beautiful. And the new visitor center wasn't there yet. It was a very small, very outdated visitor center that was there. And we took a tour, and, I didn't do the canoe ride at the time, the canoeing at the time, but I did later. But to see people that was coming out to go on a trail and to bird watch, and they had this beautiful butterfly garden and just all these different components, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And to learn about the Everglades and how we were going to educate people about the Everglades to make them want to give to build this new visitor center. So we had the most attended groundbreaking in National Wildlife Park history.
Wow. Really? That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we had a groundbreaking ceremony. We had roughly about 300 people show up.
That's awesome.
To this groundbreaking ceremony. You would have thought we had like a $20,000 budget. Rob, we did this thing on probably like $2,500.
Well, that's a testament to your skill as a marketer and to just how awesome the refuge is. And that new visitor center is excellent. It's really cool. Unfortunately,
it's amazing. Oh yeah. So that groundbreaking literally had the Fish and Wildlife organization. They committed, I believe their first commitment was about close to $200,000 that they committed that day. And we had congressional representation there. So we had 4 Congress people there show up.
Yeah.
And it was a great, because Shaw, what was his name? Congressman Shaw. What's his first name?
Congressman Shaw.
He had ended up passing the baton to Ron Klein.
Oh, wow. This is a while ago.
This was a while ago. Yeah.
I don't even remember. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. So anyways, but I'm just telling you the experience we had. And so what we end up doing after that was really cool. So I was on the board for Girls to Women that I'm the president for now. We end up having the girls come out each year for probably 3 years straight to do a photography contest. And they'd go out, we'd get them these disposable cameras, and they'd go out and take these photos of nature and the wildlife and everything. And do you know that their photos and the girls were featured in the National Wildlife magazine?
That's so cool. I was going to say, they still do that contest. And there's this huge, if you go to their website, you can look through like previous winners and stuff. And the photos are amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. It was amazing. So that's how far back I go.
No, that's incredible. I mean, I didn't know you were part of the opening of the visitor center. That's so cool.
Yeah. So it was an amazing experience, but it really taught me so much about just that beautiful natural resource that we have right here, and how important it is for us to preserve it. How important it is for us to use it as an education tool, not just for that area, but the entire area as a whole. So yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to interject that. Finish your thought.
No. Very important to make that point. And like you said, it's such an important resource that we have this incredible National Wildlife Refuge in our county. A lot of folks don't know about it, but I'm happy that from our board, we're able to partner with them. They've been an excellent partner and use it to really get kids out there and make an impactful educational experience with them. The other thing I want to mention, just in general, to your earlier sort of question, like what else could I sort of throw in there about the board, is that I think I've alluded to this earlier, but we were recognized as being one of the most effective soil and water conservation districts in the state, which was a huge honor. We were very flattered by that, and the Department of Agriculture asked us to sort of pick up the duties of the mobile irrigation labs for both Broward and Miami-Dade counties. And so we actually brought in one of the project managers from Miami-Dade, and he works for our district now. And so we expanded the duties of what we do drastically, and we now do that. All those, the irrigation surveys and stuff that I mentioned earlier that we do at the farms, we do that in the whole Tri-County area now. So our district is more or less now recognized as a hub for all of Southeast Florida. which I'm very proud of, but really owe it to just our excellent staff. Our executive director, Laura, is incredibly organized and efficient and knowledgeable of what she does. And our two managers that go out into the field, David, who is recognized as a subject matter expert, he actually trains engineers all over the state on how to go out and do these surveys and stuff. He's excellent. We also have Ramon, who's awesome and is always out at the farms working with those farmers. So we have just an incredible staff that I just wanted to briefly recognize. And I'm just very proud of what our district has been able to accomplish with the budget that we do have.
No, that's super important. So before we close out, I want to just kind of have you just say, we talked about what Soil and Water Conservation District is. So let's just quickly, what isn't it and what don't you do as a board member?
Sure. We're a non-taxing district, so we're not any sort of burden to the taxpayer. All of our money comes through different grants. A lot of it from the Department of Agriculture, a lot of it through the county, I think we get some through the South Florida Water Management District. And we can't impose any sort of regulations due to that. So a lot of folks are very, I think even some of the current candidates are confused about that. Mm-hmm. And we don't really, we can educate folks based on anything that has to do with soil and water technically, but we don't really do anything with the ocean, except for just kind of raising awareness of coastal issues. We don't really have any regulatory authority out there. We're not really doing any work. So I know a lot of folks ask about, ocean issues and coastal issues that we really don't, unfortunately, have an impact on. We often get mixed up with the Lake Worth Management District, who maintains the canals and cleans them, who we do partner with and we have a really good relationship with. We even gave them an award a couple of years ago for doing such a good job at managing the canals in the ag reserve. But we more or less just partner with them and let them know when there are issues. And then they're the ones that kind of doing that work. It's not us. And that's the unfortunate thing about kind of not being super well known, is our duties get conflated with the duties of other organizations,
Awesome. Well, no, that's good, because I wanted to make sure that people were clear on what it is that Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation does, and then what you don't do. And then do you want to touch on anything about the budget oversight, which is not a huge budget, so I don't want people to think that, the budget is like millions and billions of dollars that you're overseeing.
I think we're at about 450,000 right now is our 2021 budget. So it's not a massive budget, but we make it work. We use it obviously to pay our staff, which we need, and they work extremely hard. And yeah, it's not a huge budget, but we do what we can with it. And things like the Ambassador of the Wetlands program, that's something that we're only able to do because we have grant money that's specifically allocated for that program. And we didn't even get it this year, obviously, because we kind of saw the writing on the wall. We weren't going to be able to do the program during the pandemic. So it's very important. That's a big part of what we do as well. And again, what our director's very good at is finding grant opportunities that are outside of the purview of what we get through our contracts with the Department of Agriculture and things like that. So we're all working on different grant opportunities and trying to raise money so we can grow these programs. And one thing we'd love to be able to do is what we did about, I think, 12 years ago now, way before I was on the board. We had an urban mobile irrigation lab, which did the same thing that we do for farmers now, but we actually did that same sort of work in HOAs and in residential areas to help folks, expend less water. So I'd love to be able to implement that sort of program again, but unfortunately that grant program dried up, and so we didn't have the funding to do it anymore. And so again, I'm hoping that there are additional funding opportunities down the road so we can expand some more educational programs and expand our, irrigation optimization services.
Awesome. And how can I'm not a board member yet. I'm hoping that the voters will decide that, and I'll be able to serve as your colleague. But how do you foresee outside of grants? Is there an opportunity for businesses to get involved and contribute to these educational programs? What are some other ways that you're able to grow your resources to be able to do the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. For opportunities to partner with other businesses and nonprofits and things that want to get involved. So I would just say reach out to us. Any business that's interested in seeing us grow these programs and would like to sort of donate or contribute to our district. I mean, I would love to have more of those conversations.
Absolutely. Well, I won't keep you, Rob. Thank you so much for all the information. I really hope that this broadcast will better inform people of what Palm Beach Soil and Water Conservation District is and what it is not, as well as both Rob and I, and I'm speaking for Rob, ask for your support on your ballot. So if you requested your vote by mail ballot, we ask that you flip it over and go to the bottom and look for Ann Marie Sorrell as well as Rob Long. We ask for your support. We ask for your vote. Early voting starts October 19th, so you'll be able to start voting early all the way through, I believe, October. What's the end date for early voting? I have that somewhere. November 1st. Yeah. So October 19th through November 1st, early voting starts. As a matter of fact, it says it right here at the bottom of the screen. And then, of course, election day is November 3rd. If you want to get involved in either one of our campaigns or both, we welcome your volunteer, your time to help us make phone calls, put out yard signs, whatever it is that you can help with, host a meet and greet for either one of us. We also welcome you to contribute to our campaign so that we can get the word out. And more importantly, and I'm sure Rob will echo this at the end, we definitely welcome you and appreciate your votes. And every one of your friends, colleagues, family members, any eligible voter that you know, we appreciate you encouraging them to vote for us as well. So Rob, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for hosting this, Ann Marie. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's so important that we do talk about what this district does, especially when folks are going to be voting based on that. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come out and talk about it. And chatting with you is always fun. So count me in any time. But for anyone who is interested in donating to my campaign or just chatting with me in general, again, my website's voteforroblong.com. Right now, it's just a donation link. There will be a full website there in a day or so. And to email me, that's just voteforroblong@gmail.com. So not hard to get in touch with, and I'm always open to chatting with anyone about anything regarding the district.
Okay, well, Rob, I am putting that in the chat. And you said at gmail.com, voteforroblong@gmail.com, right?
Yep, that's it.
All right, give me 1 second. All right, and for anyone who is looking for information on my campaign, please visit electannmariesorrell.com. That's electannmariesorrell.com. I'm also putting it in our chat, so you can go there for more information. You can also email me at electannmariesorrell@gmail.com as well, and I will also add that to the chat for those who are interested in reaching out, getting involved. We need your help to spread the word. Oh, I'm having a hard time typing right now. All right. There we go. Wonderful. So please share this video, guys. We have covered a wealth of information on water matters, climate change, COVID and how it impacts agriculture, our ag community, Lake Okeechobee, what the district does and does not do. So wealth of information here. Please share this video with anyone who may be in question or who wants to learn more about myself or Rob Long before casting their vote on the ballot. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thank you again, Rob. Good luck with your election.
You as well.
And thank you. I look forward to hopefully serve alongside you so that we can continue these great efforts and continue educating our community about these different matters that are so important.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. This was great. We did cover a lot of stuff, didn't we?
We did. We did. So please share and join me next week as we come back with Tea with Ann Marie, where we spill the tea on business, politics, and community happenings. Thank you all for joining us.